Hey guys, today I'm out in New York and I have finally been able to get hands-on with the new Rivian R2. I was invited to the R2 release in Los Angeles. Unfortunately, I couldn't make it, but I really wanted to save my thoughts until I could actually see one in person. This is perhaps the most important vehicle in Rivian's history, aside of course from the original R1 truck that we owned, because this is going to be more affordable. It's going to start around $45,000. You're going to be able to get a single motor, a dual motor, or a tri-motor version of this. And of course, if you still want to go wicked fast, 0 to 60, you can do that in the tri-motor version, but we don't know how much that's going to cost. Now, there are some significant differences between this and the R2. When you move around to the side, you'll notice that the 2 is definitely smaller than the R1 with a significantly lower roof height. That's going to make it easier to put bicycles or kayaks or things like that on the top, and then we get a little bit less ground clearance because this does not have the adaptive air suspension that of course is standard on every R1, whether we're talking about the truck or the SUV. The R2 lineup, it's going to have a more traditional suspension setup, obviously helping reduce costs. But we get the same sort of door handles here, and if you come in closer to the roofline, you notice that there's still a dedication to off-road adventures. So we have mount points on the roof here for mounting things if you want to lash them onto the roof. There are going to be a ton of different accessories, things like load bars, roof racks, things like that. Down here, of course, we have unique wheels. The wheels are going to change based on the model. These are obviously not the production tires on the wheel, it looks like, since these are looking a little bit more aggressive than what we might find on the final version. Keep in mind, we don't have final details on a lot of things, but these are pretty wide, 275 with tires. Now, moving around to the rear of the R2, you're going to notice that it definitely has a bit of a different design. Probably the biggest thing is that we have a rear opening glass. That definitely adds a lot of practicality. This is something that's been missing from a lot of SUVs and crossovers in America lately when the vehicles get redesigned, whether that was a flip up or a slide down glass. It's just something that a lot of manufacturers have been abandoning, and I'm really happy that Rivian has brought that feature along for the R2. Of course, we still have the distinctive light bar running across the rear, Rivian spelled out nice and big there across the back. Let's see if we can get someone to open the hatch so we can take a look closer inside. Back here, you'll notice we have a 40-20-40 folding rear seat back. That really improves practicality because you can fold the center section down, put skis in there easily. And then if you come back in for a look, a lot of additional storage space right there under the load floor. Nice, big, deep well. And they did confirm that the storage in the R2 is going to be basically the same whether you get the single motor, the dual motor, or the tri-motor version. And over here on this side, we still have some nice touches like the AC power outlet, USB-C charge ports right there, a place to dock the sliding cargo cover right up top, but you'll notice no air compressor because no adaptive air suspension on board. Now let's come around the side and take a look inside the R2. On the inside, the first thing you're going to notice is that the R2 is, of course, a two-row vehicle, as I said before, but we have lots and lots of room inside. If you come in for a look closer up here, you notice that we have the distinctive flat floor that you'd expect in a modern EV. Of course, the same sort of chili witch mats that we find in the regular R1. That's not my favorite design, but here in the center console, we have heated seat controls, we have power door lock buttons, USB charge ports there, air vents in the back. This is a really early pre-production model, so don't pay too much attention to some of the finer details. Extra storage behind the seats. We still have the coat hooks and USB-C charge ports there. The seat design, it looks kind of like the R1. So if you come in closer for the seat design, you'll notice we have a very similar design to this seat back here. Headrest right there, and of course a huge sheet of glass right above my head. That's really going to improve the interior roominess and feel of the R2. I really like the fact that they made the body really square also, so the sides of this roofline are nice and far away from my head, really making this a roomier, giving it a roomier vibe, I would say. We also have a fold-down center armrest right there with two cup holders in the middle, and then we can take a look at the front in a bit. I really appreciate the attention to detail that we find in this interior as well. We don't know exactly what the base and the top-end interiors will look like, but in this model we have a lot of stitched material on the rear doors, lots of fabric inserts as well, really helping dress things up. Moving up front, you'll notice one major change immediately, and that's the fact that we have not one but two glove boxes up front. That's been a common complaint about the R1, whether we're talking about the truck or the SUV. There wasn't a lot of storage up front, and Rivian went ahead and gave us even more storage than we found in that model. There's going to be one in the center and one over here on the passenger side. And then there's also going to be some center console storage under there as well. Again, up front, we have lots of high-quality materials, stitched goods right there on the front door panels, and lots of fabric inserts. It's interesting because fabric is not a terribly expensive design element as far as manufacture, but it really helps improve the look and feel of interior components, and that's why we see it in so many EVs. So fabric insert right there on the dashboard. It's also easier to make renewable fabrics, honestly, than some renewable leather imitation products, but we still have those stitched goods on top of the dashboard. We have a new touchscreen infotainment system right here in the middle of everything, and of course, real wood trim running right there across the dashboard. This has the latest software from Rivian. It definitely has a slightly different look and feel to the R1, but it's definitely closely related as well. And I really love the fact that Rivian has definitely made some extensive changes to their software. That's something we really noticed the last time I was driving an R1S, is that even between then and the first time I drove the R1S, there were significant changes to the software, and we see that yet again here. So we don't know exactly how much of this is going to work its way down to the other models, but I would suspect a reasonable amount. Heated seats, of course, over there for the driver and front passenger, 2-zone automatic climate control, and still a driver's side LCD instrument cluster. That's probably one of the big reasons to get this over some of the competition, most notably, of course, a Tesla. Now, moving out from there, we have a unique steering wheel. This definitely has a different design than we found in the R1 lineup. The most notable thing are these control wheels over here with haptic feedback. It's really a cool touch, and they actually made them work in this demo model. So you can toggle them side to side right like that with haptic feedback, or roll them around. This one does volume and some of the other widgets. This one over here in this model currently just does the drive mode, which pops up there on the center screen. We have a stitched airbag cover, more wood trim there, and they made some changes. I can't turn the steering wheel, of course. It's a little bit difficult to focus on the shifter stalk, but this is also the cruise control stalk, and that's a nice touch because before we had to use the buttons on the steering wheel to adjust the cruise control in addition to a number of other features. Now this is a little bit more limited in function, and then they've put some of those other controls over there on physical stalk. So I think that's going to make it a little bit easier for drivers to get used to the car, especially coming from a non-EV into something like this. Now again, as you'd expect, we have a flat floor up front with that storage divider bin right there, some extra storage under that area, place for you to charge your mobile smartphone right there, or mobile device I should say, and then a big storage compartment right there in the middle of everything. They've gone from a little bit less than average storage to way above average storage, going from the R1 to the R2. Now you'll notice we still have electronic air vents here, so these are not physical air vents like the rear ones. You still have to adjust the air vent from the center console over there, but we do have an air vent that runs right there behind the steering wheel, so another kind of nice touch that we find borrowed from some of the more expensive models. Now going over to the front doors here, you notice we have the door lock buttons there, a little bit different, electronic door releases there, and then the usual window switches. Let's see if we can get someone to open the hood. The front seat design, again, very similar to the R1, but definitely with a different twist, of course, for the R2. So a little bit less expensive looking in its general design, but still pretty comfortable. Now, if we go up there to the ceiling, you notice that enormous sheet of glass, of course, extends all the way over all 4 passengers' heads. One of the coolest features inside is that both of the front seats fold flat. Now, obviously, there's a cargo practicality application for the passenger seat folding flat. You could put a big ladder in here, but there's also a camping application for the fold flat front seats, because with the rear seats folded flat and both front seats folded flat, you could put a big air mattress in there and you could sleep in your car on a camping trip, something like that. That's a really cool touch and something that we don't find really on any of the competition. Also, as you'd expect in a Rivian, we have a big front trunk. So come in for a closer look here. It is actually not that much smaller than we find in the R1. We still have this underfloor divider here, so that way you can section off that storage area, put some of those really small things like charge cord adapters, etc. under there. It's worth noting that you will need charge cord adapters for the R2, but not the same adapters that you'll need in an R1, because this is going to have the J3400 or NACS connector standard on it, and the charge door is going to be where I think it ought to be, back there on the passenger side. And that's rational because if you park on a curb and you're curbside charging, like we're going to see more charging in North America, you don't have that cord off over there in traffic or with bicycles, etc. It's right on the curb, exactly where it should be. Now, this is not a powered front trunk like we find in the R1. It is a manual front trunk. So we have a little pull handle right there to help you close it, and then it has an electric latch to help make sure that it's actually latched down. Coming in for a closer look up here, you'll notice we have slightly different headlights. Just keep coming on in here. Slightly different headlights than we find in the R1. These are tri-module headlights instead of the quad-module headlights, but very, very similar design. And then down lower on the bumper, we still have the metal recovery hooks down here. A touch that, honestly, I was surprised that we saw in the R1 lineup, but is continuing over here in the R2. Then there's a camera right there in the middle of everything, nice and discreet in the front bumper. Unfortunately, I'm not allowed to open the door, but behind here we do have that NACS connector in a really slim housing right here. Now you might be wondering, why did they choose this location if they are definitely dedicated to the future of J3400 when Tesla has it on the opposite side? Well, two reasons. Tesla has said that they're going to be making longer cords on the V4 stations, and this is the location that's by far preferred in Europe. This is going to be sold in Europe, and there is an awful lot of curbside charging. So that's why they have it down here. Again, if you're parallel parking in a city, and you want to charge on those parking bullards, those charging bullards that are right there on the sidewalk, this is where you're going to want to plug in, rather than having your cord dangling out there in traffic. I recently spent some time in Italy driving an EV and a plug-in hybrid there, and I noticed that a lot of the EVs that had the charge door on the wrong side were damaged or broken or bent up because a bicycle or something had hit them, so that's exactly why they want this here. And we do know that there are going to be curbside charging stations coming very soon in Chicago and in Detroit and in New York this calendar year, apparently with the J3400 connector on them. So be sure and stay tuned, because hopefully we'll have a video on that soon. Let me know what you think of the Rivian R2, and just sort of guess. I wonder what the top end price of this is going to be. My personal estimation is that we should probably see a maximum of around $80-something thousand, perhaps even $90,000 on the top end tri-motor model, but who knows, Rivian could surprise us on that. It is definitely going to be significantly less expensive to buy initially than the R1S, because this is going to start around $45,000, not around $78,000 or so for the R1S. If you want to get your hands on one, hopefully you have already pre-ordered one, because sales are going to start early 2026. And by then, there are probably going to be a solid number of other options to choose from, because the compact crossover segment is certainly the hottest segment in North America, and that is exactly where Rivian has decided to play with this. It's going to be a solid competitor to the Tesla Model Y, of course, with greater cargo practicality, more of a focus on off-roading and adventure seeking, especially with the different off-road packages that are going to be offered, the tri-motor design, and just Rivian software, which has certainly been more off-road focused. Let me know what you think about that as well, and I'll see all of you later.